Hey guys, tonight, we saddle up in the middle of the wind-whipped steppe, the moon casting silver over the grasslands, your breath fogging in the icy air as hooves pound like distant thunder. You're not here to fight, though you're armed. You're not here to trade, though your saddlebags are heavy. You're here to run fast, silent, relentless. You are a Mongol courier, and the night is yours. You cradle a wax-sealed satchel under your coat, its contents unknown, its urgency absolute. In this empire, sleep is a luxury, not a guarantee. You ride in relay trading exhausted horses for fresh ones at lonely outposts. The wind howls. The wolves are interested. You keep going. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time down below. I want to see where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You kick your heels into the sides of a stallion, bred to run through eternity. Beneath you, the horse surges. The world blurs into a dark rush of wind and fur and star-patched skies. Ahead, a firelit speck, the next relay station just barely visible. Behind, nothing but the cold breath of empire and the slow rising fear that you're not quite human anymore. This is the Mongol Empire in motion. It's the 13th century, and you are part of the most efficient communication system the world has ever seen. It's called the Yam. But right now, it just feels like the wind is trying to slap you off your horse. You ride through night and day without stopping. Sleep comes in snatches, head nods, jostling dreams stolen on the back of a gallop or sprawled awkwardly in a yurt. You sleep like a lizard, eyes open, ready to sprint. Your saddle is your bed, your pillow is your elbow, and your dreams are often interrupted by someone screaming, another message in your general direction. Fringe fact: some sources claim that riders developed the ability to doze while upright in the saddle. Even mid-trot. Your body adapts because it has to. Much like your bladder has learned that peeing off a horse is now a skill, not a choice. Mongol couriers were not just fast, they were weirdly biomechanical, the first true cyborgs of the medieval world, if you squint hard enough and forgive the lack of metal. You're not just a messenger. You're the bloodstream of the empire. Messages flow from the Great Khan to his farthest generals through you. You carry royal decrees, tribute instructions, surveillance reports, and occasionally terrifying gossip about who got executed this week. You're like a medieval push notification, and no one can swipe you away. The Mongol system doesn't tolerate delay. Every second counts. Historians still argue whether riders faced execution for tardiness, but we do know penalties could include loss of privileges, land, or teeth. You grip your reins tighter. The horse under you is part of the plan too. Mongols don't just ride one horse, they ride a tuck string of them. At relay stations spaced about 25-30 miles apart, fresh mounts wait tied and fed. You swap to a new one without dismounting. Yes, it's that slick. Each one's chosen for stamina, temperament, and the ability to not kick you in the face while you're half asleep. The Mongols thought of everything except your poor thighs. Sleep deprivation becomes a badge of honor. You brag about how long you rode without blinking. You invent new units of measure like 3 yams wide to describe just how utterly dead you feel. Your comrades get it. They also haven't seen their beds in 3 moons. But the strange thing is, you don't break. You adapt. Here's where it gets slightly sci-fi. Modern chronobiologists think that under extreme conditions, the human circadian rhythm compresses, creating fragmented sleep patterns. You're experiencing this in real time. Your body's not just tired, it's rewiring. You no longer sleep for hours. You snatch micro naps, Your dreams are fractured, strange, often Mongol-themed, which is a weird twist considering you are Mongol. And then there's the food. You eat while riding. Dried mutton jerky, fermented mare's milk, and air-cured cheese that tastes like regret. Nothing puts you to sleep faster than a belly full of salty milk and existential dread. And yet you go on. One night, near the frozen bend of a river, your horse pulls up lame. You're miles from the next station. You have to walk, dragging your steed behind you. The moon is high, snow begins to fall. You wrap the message in your cloak, press forward into the dark. You think about fire, about warm broth, about dreams where you don't have to deliver anything to anyone. Suddenly, from the hill, a shadow appears. Another courier. He says nothing. Just nods, gives you his horse, and rides off in the opposite direction with your tired one. The message continues. You mount, heart pounding. It's like the relay is inside your veins now. You reach the next station just before dawn. A yurt flickers with candlelight. Inside, a handler barely looks up as you toss the message into a wooden chest. You slump against the wall, curl into your coat, and sleep just for 18 minutes. That's all you get. Then it's back to the saddle. Even your dreams are running now. You don't know it yet, but what you're riding through isn't just a path. It's the spinal cord of an empire. The Mongols call it the Yam, which means checkpoint or post road, and while the name sounds like something you'd roast with marshmallows, it's actually a brutal logistical miracle stretching over 200,000 miles. Think pit stops for world domination. Built under the reign of Genghis Khan and expanded by his successors, the Yam is the circulatory system of the Mongol state. Along its tendrils, riders like you race back and forth across plains, deserts, mountains, and even frozen lakes. At intervals of about 25 to 30 miles, way stations called urteja dot the land. Each has fresh horses' food and maybe a straw mat to collapse on if you're lucky and not bleeding. You never ride the same horse more than once per stretch. Horses are currency here, sturdy, shaggy, and possibly smarter than you at 3 a.m. They've memorized routes, smells, and which troughs have the good moss. If one dies mid-run, it's not the end of the mission. You walk, you hitchhike, you improvise. The message must move. The Yam is more than a string of ponies and huts. It's a state-sponsored, militarized communication grid that allowed Genghis Khan to control a landmass so big, if you flattened the Earth's surface, it'd still need a few extra folds to fit. Think Wi-Fi. If it bit you, you're given a jirej, a metal tablet stamped with the Great Khan's authority. It's your backstage pass, your get-out-of-taxes card, and your proof that you're not just a drifter looking for soup. Flash it, and local administrators hand over supplies, horses, and maybe a pillow if they're generous and haven't been raided lately. Lose it. You may as well walk into the forest and let the wolves decide your bedtime. Historians still argue whether the Yam was completely original or borrowed from earlier Chinese and Persian systems. The truth probably lies in the Mongols doing what they do best, studying their enemies, then building something faster, tougher, and with fewer snack breaks. Some quirky records suggest the stations were stocked with fermented horse milk that had to be replenished weekly, even if no courier came by. Picture that some exhausted quartermaster sitting in a wind-blasted yurt guarding sour milk like it's royal treasure. Meanwhile, you're galloping past, praying it doesn't come back up mid-ride. The brilliance of the Yam is its redundancy. Multiple couriers on staggered routes, double horses, backups for the backups. Like a medieval FedEx, except every package has imperial secrets, and the delivery guy hasn't slept since the last eclipse. Each relay station is a pocket of organized chaos. You ride in, toss your reins to a sleepy handler, and yell fresh mount before even catching your breath. While someone throws oats at the next horse, you down a leather flask of salty tea, maybe scream into your sleeve and hop back on without ever touching a chair. It's beautiful in a sort of soul-destroying way. But here's the kicker. You're not alone. Along the Yam travel merchants, envoys, spies, and even Buddhist monks with scrolls tucked under their robes. The empire's arteries don't just pulse with war. They throb with unculture and science, and really questionable gossip. That guy riding past you right now might be carrying plans for a new irrigation system, or a hit list, or both. The Mongols were obsessed with intelligence, and they understood something we're just now rediscovering with fiber optics and notifications. Speed changes power. Whoever gets the message fastest wins. That means emperors don't sleep well because couriers like you keep waking them up. It also means no one else gets to rest easy either. Cities tremble when Mongol riders are seen outside their walls, because the last time someone delivered a sealed scroll, half the town got conscripted, and the other half got a polite invitation to surrender before sunset. But back to you. You've just arrived at a relay near the Altai Mountains. The yurt is half buried in snow, the sky is the color of boiled bones, and the wind sounds like it's whispering in Mongolian, which is extra creepy. You duck inside. A pot of tsampa barley porridge simmers by the hearth. You don't even ask. You just eat. Across from you, another courier lies face down on a goat hide, snoring like a thunderstorm in a bucket. His jurej dangles from his belt, gleaming in the firelight. You wonder how long he's been here. You wonder if he even knows where he is anymore. You shake the snow from your coat, touch the sealed pouch under your tunic, and step back out into the dark. Out here, the Yam is invisible. There are no signs, no mile markers, just instinct stars and the muscle memory of hooves on frost. You ride by feel now. The sky is a dome, the wind is your map, and every breath you take is one step closer to history being written or rewritten. Your body aches, your eyelids try to betray you, but you keep going because deep down you understand something strange and modern. The future belongs to those who don't wait. You're 3 days into the run now. Or is it 4? Time gets slippery out here. The sky changes, but you're not sure if it's a new day or just the moon playing tricks again. Your legs feel like soup, your eyes are grainy with dust, and you've developed a new personal relationship with the concept of exhaustion. Mongol jet lag, it's real, it's medieval, and it makes your dreams smell like horse sweat. See, the Yam isn't just fast, it's relentless. The constant push to deliver messages at breakneck speed has begun to warp something more fragile than your knees, the very structure of time itself. You're one courier, but there are thousands like you, all riding different directions, all synchronized by imperial urgency. Sleep is no longer sacred. It's something to bargain for. And if you're wondering what this has to do with how the world sleeps well, you're living it. When the Mongol Empire enforced rapid communication, something subtle happened to everyone downstream. Governors had to be ready for news at any hour. Traders had to respond to shifts in policy immediately. Soldiers had to react before the ink dried. Suddenly, nobody was allowed to be unreachable even at night. Sound familiar? There's a fringe theory, okay? A historical whisper that Genghis Khan's network actually caused time itself to contract across Eurasia. Not in the sci-fi wormhole sense, but in the deeply human one. When news travels faster, people begin to expect faster answers. And faster answers mean tighter schedules. Tighter schedules mean less sleep. Your heart thuds in rhythm with the gallop beneath you. You haven't seen your own hands in daylight for 2 stretches now. You dream of still water and silence, but when you wake, there's another sealed scroll in your lap. You used to measure days by the sun. Now you measure them by how many horses you've burned through. A rider beside you, barely a blur in the mist, screams something you can't hear. He peels off toward a different route, vanishing into trees. You don't even flinch. That's courier brain now. Hyperfocus, half asleep. There's a strange peace to it. Like you've stepped outside of linear time and now just exist in velocity. One mainstream historical fact we do know under Ogedei Khan. Genghis's son, the Yam system, was refined into a clockwork machine. He formalized schedules, imposed quotas, and made it clear delay is a disease. A letter could cross 200 miles in a day under good conditions. For the 13th century, that's basically warp speed. And it wasn't just for military orders. Tax documents, trade agreements, love letters from bored wives in Karakoram. Once the system was there, everyone used it. You've probably carried some very saucy parchment in your time sealed, of course. Historians still argue whether this pressure to respond faster created intentional sleep discipline. That is, enforced rest windows at certain stations to prevent burnout. Some claim the relay posts were like proto-motels, warm-guarded, supplied with fuel and food to promote brief but healthy naps. Others think that's a romantic myth, and in truth couriers dropped wherever they collapsed. You're leaning toward the latter. There was a post near the Amur River, once tiny, tucked against a cliff. The station master offered you a bed, a real one, with a blanket. You fell into it like a stone, dead asleep. When you woke, a note had been left on your chest. Message late. Penalty issued. Ride faster. You never saw a blanket again. Now you're on the wide plains again, somewhere west. The stars are unfamiliar. A herd of wild horses, ghosts across the horizon. You blink to stay awake. A crow circles overhead, an omen maybe, or just hungry. You toss it a crust from your coat. It doesn't say thank you. Sleep comes weird now. You don't dream in scenes anymore. You dream in flashes, gallops, faces, fire. A snatch of a joke someone told at the last relay, something about a goat that walked into a tent. You try to laugh, but your lips are cracked. And here's something you start to notice, something almost modern in feel. Everyone is tired, not just you. The yam handlers, the local officials, even the governors, scribes, and nobles you pass when you're delivering top-tier scrolls. Everyone's eyes are rimmed red. Everyone's on edge. The empire has become a living organism that never truly sleeps. It only blinks. Back in Karakoram, the capital, they say the scribes have started dividing their day into 3 shifts, just to keep pace with incoming dispatches. The palace glows at night now. Braziers lit, couriers coming and going at all hours. Someone joked they should build a clock to track this madness. Spoiler, eventually they will. You cross a river by moonlight, barely a bridge, more like a suggestion of wood planks. Your horse hesitates. You lean forward, whisper something that even you don't understand. It steps onto the bridge. It's wet. You are not dry. But the message keeps moving. Fringe detail for tonight. There's a legend, unconfirmed, possibly vodka-induced, that a courier once rode from central Mongolia to Crimea in just 6 days, with fresh horses every 30 miles. That's nearly 2,000 miles of near-constant motion. They say he never slept. They say he died sitting up. They say someone carved his name into a stone post and then spelled it wrong. You ride on. Sleep comes in gasps now. You nod for a second and dream of fire. You snap awake. There is fire, a station up ahead. Smoke rising, torched, gone. Raiders, rebels, hard to say. You don't stop. You veer off the path and keep riding. Somewhere a hawk screeches. You think if sleep is a river, you've become the stone skipping across it. Never quite submerged, never quite still. And this endless run has changed you. You no longer dream of rest. You dream of movement. You dream of forward. And in doing so, you carry with you the strange seed of modern insomnia, the belief that everything urgent is also important, and that sleep must always be earned. Your horse is foaming now. Not from fear, just pure, righteous overexertion. You ease back slightly, not out of mercy, but calculation. If it drops dead, that's a delay. You can afford exhaustion, you cannot afford time. The road isn't a road anymore. Just a series of dirt bruises stitched together by legend and hoofprint. Wind slaps your face like an annoyed aunt. Dust bites your teeth. The world has become a blur of motion and distant silhouettes, yurts, trees, a carcass or two. You pass through it all like a ghost, late for an appointment with history. This leg of your journey, it's not about getting the message there fast. It's about making sure the people who receive the message do something about it immediately. Because this is the yam's real flex. It doesn't just move information fast. It's forces response. You're the pre-modern push notification minus the ding and plus a lot more horsehair in your mouth. You reach a new station. It's got walls, actual timber walls. Fancy. Someone important must pass through often. The guards see your gerège, and their posture clicks upright like crossbows. One of them scuttles off into the main tent. Inside, there's a governor who hasn't finished his breakfast. You watch as the scroll is delivered. You watch as he reads it, chewing stops. His spoon floats mid-air. You see it the moment his day collapses under the weight of Mongol efficiency. Then you leave, and while you ride again, your mind drifts toward something strange. How this system doesn't just change messengers, it changes the recipients. People begin to anticipate dispatches. They start adjusting sleep schedules, posting night sentries, drafting decrees at midnight. Palaces burn more oil. Candles run out faster. Somewhere deep in Persia, a vizier writes policies in his pajamas because the empire's rhythm doesn't wait for dawn. Historians still argue whether this shift caused a measurable change in nighttime governance, a concept barely imagined in most earlier bureaucracies. Prior to the Mongols ruling at night was rare, often superstitious, and mostly reactive, i.e., oh no, there's a riot, wake the Sultan. But with courier systems enforcing a 24-hour info stream ruling by lamplight became less unusual, and eventually expected. You unknowingly are part of the reason why some officials haven't seen their bed before sunrise in months. There's this one garrison in northern Transoxiana right near the Sir Darya River. You passed through it last winter. The commander there used to hold morning briefings, but thanks to the Yam intelligence started arriving during the second watch. So now he holds strategy meetings at 2:00 a.m. over fermented turnip wine. His lieutenants hate it. They're half drunk, half dreaming, and wholly confused. But they show up, because the scrolls arrive when they arrive. Sleep in this new world is no longer a right. It's a variable, a luxury, a line item to be managed like firewood or grain. There's even a cheeky anecdote from a scribe in Kublai Khan's court. He complained in a letter that the only thing more reliable than a Mongol courier was his insomnia, which had blossomed ever since they started delivering scrolls during every star of the heavens. Poor guy just wanted to copy treaties in peace. Instead, he's up at all hours deciphering yet another edict from halfway across the empire. But let's zoom out. This isn't just an imperial inconvenience. It's a cultural pivot. A civilization recalibrating itself around a faster tempo. And it doesn't stop at policy or war. It leaks into commerce, ritual, outwardness, and even family life. You heard a story once told at a dusty roadside inn about a boy who started lighting a candle at his window every evening, just in case father's message came tonight. a gesture that would have made no sense a generation ago. Even weddings now occasionally pause mid-ceremony for sudden scrolls. You saw one. A bride veil, fluttering, held her groom's hand, while a courier galloped into the courtyard. Everyone went silent. The scroll was read aloud. It was about taxation. Very romantic. The party resumed afterwards, slightly less drunk. The yam doesn't just demand speed. It infects everything with urgency. And here's the quirky gem tonight. Some way stations allegedly installed gong systems to alert sleeping officials when couriers arrived after dark. Picture it, some sleepy assistant jolting awake to the sound of a bronze thud at 3:00 a.m., stumbling into boots, grabbing parchment, and yelling, "Who is it this time?" In one region, they even trained dogs to bark only at the sound of hoofbeats. Mixed results. You keep riding, and the farther you go, the more you realize people downstream from your saddle have begun to adapt. Faster schedules, split shifts, rotating night scribes. The human infrastructure is evolving around the speed you provide. It's a proto-modern time culture is budding, and the push-pull of exhaustion and efficiency is its heartbeat. You once stayed at a station where the handler had divided his own sleep into 4 90-minute blocks, staggered across day and night. He said it helped him stay mentally sharp for late arrivals like you. You nodded. Secretly, you wondered when he last saw his children. Not all the changes are noble. There's strain. There's burnout. There are signs, bags under eyes, tempers cut short, mistakes copied into royal scrolls because the scribe nodded off mid-sentence. But the empire doesn't slow down. It corrects forward, always forward. And as you ride toward the next sliver of firelight on the horizon, you realize something chilling. This system is self-reinforcing. The faster it gets, the more it demands speed. And the more it demands speed, the more people sacrifice sleep not as a fluke, but as policy. Sound familiar? You lean forward, gripping the reins. Your breath fogs in the air like tiny scrolls waiting to be written. Behind you, the wind carries the echo of your gallop. Ahead, someone's already lighting a torch. The next relay station is almost invisible until you're practically on top of it. Just a squat shape in the dark, low and wide like a sleeping ox trying not to be noticed. You don't blame it. If you had walls, you'd keep them quiet too. The station keeper waves you in, eyes puffy from interrupted sleep. His left hand clutches a scrap of meat. His right reaches for your scroll like it owes him something. You don't bother dismounting. You just hand it over and grab the next one, already pre-labeled, already sealed, already waiting. You're the bloodstream now, and the empire is a body that can't afford clots. As you gallop away, another scroll strapped tight to your chest. It hits you. This whole operation runs on anticipation. Everything has to be ready before it's needed. Horses pre-saddled, food pre-cooked, people pre-awake. And that's where the real shift starts. In the mindset. You begin to notice the eerie discipline that's crept into everyday life in the yam's shadow. People don't just react anymore. They prepare. They live as if a message could arrive at any hour. As if sleep is a gamble. As if the world could shift in a sentence. Back at court, whichever court really, Karakoram or Kanbalik or Samarkand, they call it readiness. But let's be honest, it's stress. Historians still argue whether this constant bracing for news marks the circa earliest form of state-induced anticipatory anxiety. Some say no, that humans have always been jumpy creatures, waiting for bad omens and worse neighbors. But others point to a measurable change in personal routines, increased late-night activity, decreased leisure sleep, and a boom in early wakefulness, especially among the elite. It's not just the governors, artisans, priests, Even nomadic herders start tracking courier patterns. You once passed a yurt where the family had built a tiny perch for night watchers' children, mostly who'd shout if they saw a courier coming. Their father was a minor official. If he missed a scroll, penalty. If he missed 3, reassignment. Possibly to somewhere snowier, like Siberia. And that's the twist. This courier system begins to change sleep not just through disruption, but through design. People reshape their nights. Not because they want to, because they have to. You remember a station near Lake Baikal, ice-crusted, miserable, full of fish smell and resignation. The handler there was an old woman with a back like a question mark. She barely spoke, but her setup was legendary: 4 horses, rotated oats, pre-soaked dispatches stored by destination. You asked how she kept up. "Can't sleep long," she said, "because sleep makes you late." Bleak, but kind of poetic. And here's a juicy fringe tidbit. There's talk of one Yam postmaster who invented an early form of a pauksu wake stick. A rod balanced on his chest while sleeping that would clatter loudly if he moved too much. That way, he'd stay in the lightest sleep stage, ready to snap awake. Basically, an alarm clock without the snooze option. If that's not innovation, what is? Your saddle creaks. Your legs are numb, but that's almost pleasant now. Like how your ears stop hurting in a thunderstorm because the thunder just becomes background. You glance up. The stars tonight are especially rude, too sharp, too awake. Even the sky refuses to nap. Somewhere in the distance, you hear another courier's horse scream. You don't turn, not your route. And while the Yam bends the empire into this new restless rhythm, other civilizations begin to take notice. Merchants from Europe stumble into Mongol-run cities and marvel at the speed of it all. They delivered a letter from the steppe in less than 10 days, one Italian writes, possibly exaggerating, but the point stands. Word spreads. Soon, even foreign traders begin adapting their own timetables to Yam frequency. Some coordinate shipments to align with courier cycles. Others rent space on Mongol horses, paying extra to piggyback on imperial urgency. A particularly clever Persian merchant once told you his trick: he always sent his inventory scrolls on slow horses during the day and fast ones at night. That way, he claimed, the stars guard my business. You nodded politely while wondering how much wine he'd had. And here's the kicker. You're seeing the origins of the global supply chain's most basic enemy: delay. The Mongol courier network doesn't just create efficiency, it creates expectations. Expectations that bleed into economics, military command, spiritual consultation. Every corner of life now has a ticking sound under it. A whisper that says, faster, faster, faster. It's not just about less sleep. It's about why you're sleeping less. Because the Mongol world teaches everyone this unshakable rule. The message matters more than your pillow. Another memory. Desert Station, Uzbekistan. You delivered a scroll at midnight. The local noble didn't flinch. Just opened it. Read it, snapped his fingers. A fire was lit, a horse was saddled, a caravan rerouted. And you were given water, a rice cake, and another scroll. You weren't allowed to rest until the next post. 20 miles away, sleep in this empire becomes both scarce and strategic. You learn to nap while sitting, while chewing, while pretending to be conscious. There are entire folk songs now about dreaming with your eyes open. You've heard a few, usually sung by riders with saddle sores and haunting stares. And somewhere tucked inside your ribcage, you feel that flicker of dread. What if you miss something? What if your eyes close and the empire keeps moving without you? So you stay awake. You ride. The moon flickers between cloud ribbons. An owl watches you pass. You envy its calm. You pass a field of sleeping goats, and even they look like they've received urgent messages in their dreams. You wonder when was the last time anyone in this empire woke up slowly. The yam changed a lot of things. But this creeping, constant edge, this reshaping of human routine around velocity, that's how it changed sleep. And you haven't even hit Persia yet. You cross into Persia at dawn. Not that dawn means much anymore. Light just feels like an ambient suggestion, now a color shift, not a cue to sleep or wake. You've long stopped believing in things like time of day. There's just before the next station and after the next scroll. But Persia is different. It breathes a little softer than the steppe. Stone replaces felt. Walls curve where yurts used to sag. The yam runs here too seamlessly threaded into a world of poets, mathematicians, and overworked postmasters with deeply expressive eyebrows. Your horse's hooves strike cobbled stone. It's jarring after so much dirt. There's a brief moment where your whole body rattles like your bones are trying to remember what civilization feels like. You pass through a city gate and into what could be a painting. Lanterns still glowing, carts, half-loaded stray cats mid-stretch. But then you spot it, a yam outpost. Unmistakable even here. Flat-roofed, guarded. Someone already holding a fresh dispatch. They saw you coming. Of course they did. Here's the thing. Persia under Mongol rule doesn't just use the yam, it studies it, refines it, maybe even worships it a little. They log arrival times, measure courier fatigue, track scroll damage like modern insurance agents. It's no longer just a system, it's a science project with galloping variables. And here's your scholarly debate moment. Historians still argue whether Persia's adaptation of the yam was a sign of autonomy or assimilation. Some claim it was the Persians asserting their intellect perfecting Mongol infrastructure with local brilliance. Others say it's just another example of imperial absorption resistance swallowed and rebranded. Either way, one thing is clear. They're awake. You're handed rosewater. It tastes like apology. The station master checks your gear with a quick glance, then waves you toward a fresh horse, this one oddly well-groomed, as if someone braided its mane in preparation. The whole place smells like cumin and ink. A good sign. You mount again, and as the city fades behind you, the road takes a turn, both literal and metaphorical. See, here in Persia, the yam doesn't just move war reports and tax codes. It starts carrying culture, books, poems, recipes, rumors. For the first time, couriers like you aren't just transmitting instructions. You're transmitting atmosphere. You once carried a scroll that turned out to be a translated portion of the Shahnameh, headed toward China for imperial entertainment. Another courier told you he'd once delivered a Persian cookbook across the Hindu Kush. 3 horses died en route, but the dumpling recipe survived. That's the quirky fringe bit tonight. There are records suggesting that entire court fashion trends in Yuan China were sparked by descriptions of Persian tailoring delivered through the yam. Imagine that a silk robe in Beijing born from a paragraph dashed off in Tabriz. Of course, this means the pressure on you is different now. Not just get there fast. Now it's don't mess it up. Even a wrinkled scroll can offend a duke. The yam, efficient and relentless, becomes refined. You've watched dispatches wrapped in embroidered satchels, seals stamped with cinnamon oil to disguise horse sweat. One time you saw a scroll arrive with a literal poem about how fast it had traveled. Arrogant but fair. But this refinement comes at a cost. People start expecting perfection. Station masters lose sleep not from fear of slowness, but from fear of sloppiness. They boil wax obsessively. They polish stamps. Some even take scented baths before delivering scrolls to nobles. All because the message is no longer just information. It's image, Prestige. Prestige, you learn quickly, is exhausting. And here's the kicker. The yam forces Persia to become nocturnal. Not everyone, but enough. Scribes begin writing through the night, knowing their dispatches must ride at dawn. Scroll illuminators prop candles under magnifying stones. A few of them go blind early. One of them, you recall, invented a rotating lamp, so he could mimic sunrise without bothering the birds. Every palace you pass has one room that's always lit. Always. You know because your horse pauses to drink while you watch silhouettes argue behind silk curtains. That one's a finance minister. You can tell by the way he gestures like he's mad at numbers that refuse to behave. Sleep, someone told you in Tabriz, is for the uncurious. You think that's romantic until you realize you haven't blinked in 2 minutes. And this is the real transformation. Night becomes functional. Not mysterious, not dangerous, just productive. People used to fear the dark. Now they schedule around it. And all because the your yam refuses to slow down for sunsets. That Persian merchant town you just passed, it has an official title now. Midnight Relay Hub. There's a whole family whose only job is to stay up and cook for couriers. You ate there once. The lentils were heaven. You also nearly nodded off in their stew. Even prayers start shifting. One mosque now hosts a special pre-dawn reading, not because it's holy, but because that's when dispatches usually arrive. The imam jokes that the yam made him a morning person. His eyes, however, tell a different story. Meanwhile, caravans begin adjusting their departure times to mirror yam routes. If the scrolls travel at night, maybe they should too. No more sunrise caravans. No more sleeping merchants. The highways buzz by starlight, alive with hooves and soft curses. And just like that, the ripple widens. Because if the Mongol message network can rewrite Persian night, what else can it change? You pass another rider going the opposite direction. He nods. His eyes are red. You nod back. Your eyes are worse. Neither of you says a word, but there's a silent contract. We are awake so the world can keep moving. The sun finally rises, but it feels like an afterthought. Your next station is 20 miles away, tucked between 2 apricot groves. You know they'll have spiced milk. Maybe a cot. Maybe. But the scroll tucked into your belt is marked. Urgent, Mocha. In 2 languages. You probably won't be sleeping there either. Your hands are shaking again. Not from fear or hunger, or the cold wind curling through the folds of your coat. No, it's something worse. You're overtired. The kind of tired where your vision flickers at the edges, where your own heartbeat sounds like hoofbeats, and your horse's tail looks like it's whispering secrets to you. You keep riding. The scroll at your side isn't just urgent, it's volatile. Royal marriage negotiations between 2 families with too many soldiers and not enough chill. One wrong delay and someone's cousin ends up beheaded. You think about how that would look on the delivery report. So you lean forward. You whisper to your horse like it understands you. And if it doesn't, well, you barely understand yourself anymore. This section of the yam winds along the edge of the Zagros Mountains, Persian peaks, that hum like sleeping gods. The road narrows, trees thicken. The path turns so tightly that you nearly clip your knee on a sharp rock. Somewhere in the distance, a goat screams like it's seen the tax records. You wonder if it sleeps better than you do, because here's the new twist. The yam isn't just affecting the people who use it. It's shaping entire landscapes. Everywhere the courier line digs in, the world begins to bend around it. Villages crop up in patterns that align with rest stations. Markets shift to accommodate nocturnal travel. Inns advertise yam-friendly hours with candles already lit by dusk. You saw a barber once who specialized in pre-dawn grooming for station masters. Appearance, he said, while flicking a razor, travels faster than a horse. But here's the haunting part. The further the yam spreads, the more it divides the world into before scroll and after scroll. You stop at an unmarked outpost barely more than a lean-to wedged between cliffs. The boy there can't be more than 9, but he already knows the protocol. He takes your scroll with 2 hands, checks the wax, returns with another bundle. His mother hands you a cracked bowl of barley broth. She's missing a tooth and half a night's sleep. 2 went past before you, she says. 1 didn't stop. You nod. The broth tastes like ash and adrenaline. And this is where the yam really begins to distort not just sleep, but shununka, what sleep means. It used to be that rest was a pause, a return, a reset. Now sleep becomes tactical. You nap in 15-minute segments. You memorize tree shadows so you can sleep while riding. You train your body to collapse and rise like a drawbridge. And you're not alone. Mongol generals reportedly sleep with one eye open, not metaphorically, but because they've learned to actually do it. Quirky fringe tidbit: one warlord allegedly had his servants rotate scented candles while he slept, so that he'd know how long he'd been unconscious based on the smell in the air. Lavender meant 2 hours. Cinnamon meant wake up, and scholars even worse. A famous mathematician in Isfahan refused to sleep unless he knew exactly when the next courier was scheduled to pass within 100 miles. What if there's news, he'd ask. His students took turns watching the door. Historians still argue whether this level of obsessive data-driven vigilance began as practical necessity or as imperial paranoia. It's hard to tell anymore. Either way, the line between alert and unhinged starts looking pretty smudgy. And here's the kicker. Once sleep becomes fragmented, so does thought. Ideas change, narratives twist. Philosophers begin writing in staccato bursts. Quick insights, sharp questions, unfinished conclusions. You've seen scrolls where the text spirals in circles as if the writer was trying to stay awake while composing. Some start dreaming while scribbling. Others forget to stop. You once delivered a scroll that included 2 full recipes wedged between a legal decree and a joke about cucumbers. You didn't ask, because now even thought has a deadline. Everything has a deadline. Sleep is what you do. After curtain. Everything else, and only if nobody needs you. And the yam needs you, always. That's the strange gravity of it. This network, this lattice of motion and messages doesn't just expect your time. It expects your mind. Your loyalty, your circadian rhythm, your personality a little bit. The longer you ride, the more your body forgets its own preferences. You used to hate mornings. Now you hate knowing when morning is. Another horse, another station, another scroll marked eyes only. You don't even bother reading the sender's name. You just tuck it under your coat like a secret you'll forget before sunrise. You pass through a quiet grove where all the birds seem to sleep with one eye open. The wind smells like dry mint and overworked earth. Your horse snorts and flicks its ear at nothing. In the distance, you see torchlight another rider. Maybe from the north. Maybe from India. Maybe from somewhere that hasn't had real sleep in weeks. You nod. He nods. It's the only language you both have left. And still the yam moves. Each outpost you pass is like a heartbeat. Some fast, some irregular. but all part of this impossible beating organism that calls itself an empire. An empire where rest is rationed. An empire where silence means missed dispatches. An empire where dreams come second to directives. The next village is already awake. You see smoke curling from chimneys even though the sun hasn't fully climbed. The baker yawns into his apron. Someone waves from the roof with a lantern. You nod again. Your face hurts from pretending to be present. And somewhere in your bones, a truth settles like dust. The yam changed sleep not by stealing it, but by making it optional. That's the real trick. Sleep used to be sacred. Now it's just another thing you learn to skip. You're halfway through a mountain pass when the wind shifts sharp and sudden, like someone changed the channel. The horse senses it too, snorting hooves adjusting instinctively to the slickening path. Snow flurries spiral down from nowhere. The sky previously empty now hangs low and gray as if it's slouching. No shelter, no station, just rock snow and the tick-tick-tick of anxiety forming in the back of your mind. This, unfortunately, is Central Asia, and the yam runs here too. You wrap your scarf tighter, not because it helps, but because it gives your hands something to do. Your latest dispatch is double-wrapped in waxed leather, tucked against your ribs like a secret heartbeat. The route winds along the Altai foothills now, where one wrong step means a long, slow goodbye. But what's wild is how normal this feels, because here's the quiet truth. The yam teaches you to normalize chaos. Avalanches, ambushes, altitude, nosebleeds, that's just Tuesday. Your sleep-deprived brain doesn't flinch anymore. It categorizes. You spend hours calculating wind velocity against horse stamina, days memorizing edible mosses and which birds cry before snow. You know which mountain passes freeze over fastest. You can estimate the time of day by the taste of your own spit. And yes, that's a skill. The yam's reach here, threaded into nomadic ridgelines and ancient grazing trails, is almost mythical. It doesn't care about your comfort or your sanity. It cares only about motion. The message must move, and so you do. Still, there's something remarkable happening out here in this wilderness. Because the deeper into Central Asia the yam digs, the more it threads together worlds that weren't meant to touch. You pass a shepherd who's never seen a silk robe, but knows how to seal a scroll with frozen wax. You meet a camel herder who quotes Confucius badly, but tries because his son read it off a passing courier's scroll. Quirky tidbit. Some nomadic tribes begin timing entire migrations to coincide with yam courier patterns. They believe the network somehow blesses the land it moves through. If horses can gallop, it may be the herds can graze it. They're not entirely wrong. The paths are cleared, water points stocked. Even wolves learn to hunt elsewhere. So what you're riding now isn't just a road, it's a new organism. A pulsing, frost-covered nervous system connecting yurts, fortresses, monasteries, and everything in between. And because of this connection, sleep patterns mutate. Not just yours, everyone's. Night isn't where it used to be. In these parts, people sleep in bursts that follow the couriers. If a rider is due at 2 a.m., the family rises at 1:30, makes hot milk, waits by the fire. Then once the hoofbeats fade, they sleep again. It's fragmented but familiar, a rhythm made of gallops. You once stopped at a mountain monastery that kept vigil every third night, just in case a scroll came bearing scripture. The monks claimed they didn't mind the interruption. God, they said, works better in moonlight. Historians still argue whether this hybrid of yam-timed sleep and traditional rest was mokshamite waniksum. A temporary adaptation or a cultural evolution? Was it coping or was it transforming? Out here in the high, cold silence, it's hard to say. You just know the snow crunches under your horse in time with your thoughts. Crunch, crunch, urgent, urgent, faster. Don't sleep here. But you're slipping. Not on the path on the inside. Your thoughts loop. You begin counting to 5 over and over, not because you need to, but because if you stop, your brain might short-circuit. You imagine the scroll you carry unraveling mid-air like a ribbon, its message dissipating into mist. You shake your head. Focus. Focus on the yam station waiting beyond the gorge. They'll have a fire. Maybe dry socks. Probably not a bed, but you've slept sitting on flour sacks before. You've slept upright. You've slept while walking. Maybe this is how wolves dream, you think. One eye open, never quite drifting away. Your horse stumbles on a patch of ice, jerking you into the present. You smell pine smoke close. That means shelter. You push on, rounding a bend, and there it is, a yam rest point, barely larger than a stable wedged between 2 frozen boulders. No guards, no flag. Just a crude carving in the doorpost yam. You knock. The door creaks. Inside, a woman in wool hands you a hot drink. She doesn't speak. You nod. She nods. Somewhere in the back, a kettle hisses like it's sighing. You peel off your gloves. Steam curls from your fingertips. It feels like your body's reintroducing itself. There's no bed, just a bench and a pile of horse blankets. You sit. You rest your scroll across your lap like a child. Your head tips forward. Not sleep. Just pause. Outside, the wind dies. Snowflakes hang mid-air, reluctant to land. And then just as your eyes shut, another courier stumbles in, frozen, wide-eyed, scroll clutched to his chest like it might detonate. You catch his glance. You nod. He nods. And without words, you stand past him your drink and move to the side. He lowers himself, shaking. The yam doesn't wait. You're already reaching for your coat again. You've ridden so far east now that the sun rises a little differently, sharper, more direct, like it's got something to prove. The shadows here are crisp even before the birds wake up. And that makes sense because out here, close to the edge of the Gobi, it's not just about surviving the journey anymore. It's about what happens when the journey starts replacing everything else. You've lost track of your age, not in a poetic, drifting through time way. More like you honestly don't know how long it's been since your last real sleep cycle. Your calendar is yam-based. Now, you measure life by dispatches, seasons by saddleware, relationships by who hands you the next scroll without asking questions. You pass a courier headed the other way. His face is a blur, but you both raise fingers in greeting, not a wave, just a flick. A "we're still alive" gesture. The yam's secret handshake. You pause briefly at a windswept outpost made of camel bone and thatch. It's staffed by a blind elder and 3 children who could probably rebuild a stirrup faster than you can blink. One of them hands you a piece of dried apricot. Another replaces your horse without a word. Their father apparently hasn't come back from the last run. You don't ask how long he's been gone, because you know what it means when a courier doesn't return. But this isn't a section about tragedy, not exactly. This is about what fills in the silence. When tragedy becomes background noise, and out here the yam's silence is filled with something surprisingly powerful. Myth. The further the network stretches into the east, the more it stops being a road and starts becoming a legend. People begin to tell stories about couriers who ride without stopping for a month, about scrolls so sacred they burn up upon arrival, about horses that navigate by stars you can't even see. You once heard a trader in a border market claim that the yam has ghost riders, couriers who died mid-run, but still deliver messages in the fog. You hear hoofbeats, he whispered, but there's no horse. You laughed, but you didn't sleep that night. Quirky tidbit, some villages near the Gobi place. Offerings on the side of the yam paths, bits of jerky bowls of milk charms tied with red string. Not for you, the living courier, but for the idea of the yam itself, as if the network has become a deity, or at least a demanding spirit. It's weird, but it's not surprising, because the longer you ride this line, the more the world warps around it. Normal rules don't apply. You've seen Mongol shamans bless horses with smoke made from dried owl feathers. You've slept under a sky so full of stars, it felt like the universe was watching you blink. You once met a woman who claimed she could tell the political stability of the capital just by tasting the ink on a courier scroll. And in the middle of all this wonder, all this stretching of time and reason, something else starts to give way. Your identity. Who are you now? A name on a roster, a shadow in the snow, a blur passing through marketplaces while children point and whisper. You start to feel less like a person and more like a function. A carrier wave. A pulse of imperial will galloping from one horizon to the next. And this is what sleep becomes in this phase. Not just rare, but irrelevant. You realize with a slow blooming horror that you've stopped craving rest. Your body moves through exhaustion like it's just another terrain type. Sand, wind, bone tiredness, all temporary. You once tried to nap leaning against a well. 15 minutes later, you woke up standing. You hadn't fallen asleep. Your mind had just checked out and let the body keep going, like some weird reverse possession. Historians still argue whether this kind of mental detachment was a sign of deep discipline or complete system failure. Some say yam couriers were the height of military precision. Others claim they were sacrificial tools, burned up for speed, replaced without grief. Out here, it's hard to feel like either. You just feel empty, and not in a sad way. More like available. Hollowed out so that something else can move through you. And yet miraculously, this is where beauty creeps back in. Not all at once, just in little snatches. The way the sky glows pink right before the desert winds kick up. The moment your horse catches its own reflection in a pond and snorts like it's seen a rival. The warm silence inside a scroll station built into a ruined watchtower where someone's carved poetry into the wall. You start to notice things again. Not because you've recovered, but because you've surrendered. You're not chasing rest anymore. You're just a part of the movement. You are the yam now. Its hands, its hooves, its breath fogging in the desert morning. You pass a caravan of merchants. They step aside without being told. One bows. Another child shouts scroll-bringer in a language you barely understand. You ride on, because somewhere ahead, someone is waiting to sleep. A little easier, knowing your scroll arrived on time. And maybe that's the only sleep that matters anymore. Your horse smells the ocean before you do. It jerks its head toward the breeze, nostrils flaring. You lean forward, catch the faintest whisper of brine on the wind, and suddenly it hits. You're approaching the eastern fringe of the empire. The end of the line. The edge of the known. And this is where things start to get weird. Not weirder than ghost couriers or children who rebuild saddles in their sleep. We've already covered that. But weird in a new way. Bureaucratic weird. That creeping itch of civilization trying to make sense of something wild. Welcome to the administrative tangle of the coastal yam. Here the stations are stacked almost too close together, some barely a day apart. Scrolls move fast, like rumors in a crowded bathhouse. Riders no longer vanish into wilderness. Instead, you get shuffled through a machine that's trying very hard to look efficient, but creaks with every step. You're greeted by a clerk with meticulously oiled hair, and a scroll case shaped like a fish. He speaks 7 languages, and none of them warmly. Your arrival is logged. Your horse is inspected. Your face is compared to a sketch nailed to the wall labeled Known Riders Spring Edition. And then you're waved forward. Everything here feels like it's been copied too many times. Names, procedures, even the way people nod at you. It's like watching a ritual slowly lose meaning. You're still carrying the pulse of the empire, but out here the people receiving it are already half asleep. Because the scrolls you're delivering now, they're not life and death battle orders or royal decrees. They're dreams d'audience, trade contracts, celestial observations, complaints about grain quality, love letters, petitions for warmer boots. It's less about speed now, more about promise. The yam has become the spine of an empire-wide bedtime story. Don't worry, parents whisper, if something important happens, we'll hear it by tomorrow. The courier always comes, and that changes the way people haunt and sleep. In cities along the coast, where towers rise and docks bristle with sails, folks go to bed, expecting answers by morning. They trust the network like a second sun, reliable, invisible, always moving. Whole communities structure their insomnia around the yam. You pass a manor where a candle burns in the top window every night until a rider delivers a reply. It's superstition now. If you blow it out before the scroll arrives, the answer changes. Quirky tidbit. In certain port towns, local musicians compose yam lullabies, quiet songs performed at midnight, in hopes of drawing couriers faster. They're not catchy. They're drifty. But you've caught yourself humming one on the trail more than once. So what does it mean when sleep starts to depend on someone else's horse speed? It means trust. It means people are no longer waiting up all night in fear they're drifting off, with the confidence that someone somewhere is running while they rest, and that someone is you. Of course it's not all peaceful, because now at the far reaches the hut network is fraying. Messages get delayed, stations fall out of sync. Corruption creeps in, yes, even in a postal empire. You stop at an outpost where the station master forgets to restock your water, then demands a bribe for fresh stirrups. You pay it. You're too tired to argue. Historians still argue whether these coastal inefficiencies were symptoms of overstretch or just entropy. Maybe empires don't collapse all at once, they just start misfiling things. And here's where the existential dread sets in, because you realize you're delivering scrolls to places that might not matter anymore. Is this fishing town still aligned with the Khan? Does this harbor even read Mongolian? You don't know. You don't ask. You drop the scroll, take your barley porridge, and keep moving. But sometimes it's not the message that counts. It's the arrival. You are proof that someone still cares, that the empire remembers. You once handed a weathered scroll to a woman running a tea house on stilts. She didn't open it. She just held it for a while, eyes closed. Said it was the first one she'd seen in years. You asked what it was about. Don't know, she smiled. Doesn't matter. Means we still exist. And that hits you harder than any storm. Because back when you started, the yam was about urgency, galloping toward crises, racing the clock. But now it's about continuity. Soft assurance. The steady heartbeat of a world too big to hold all at once. You ride past a coastline where children set paper boats afloat every morning, each with a fake scroll inside. Practice runs, imagined deliveries, future couriers training in their dreams. They wave as you pass. You wave back, and somewhere behind you, another courier is chasing your trail. Not to catch you, just to keep the rhythm. Because even at the end of the map, sleep still waits for the sound of hoofbeats. You don't mean to stay at the monastery overnight. But when the scroll station's empty, and the skies turning bruise purple with a storm rolling in from the east, the monks' offer of shelter is hard to refuse. They give you a rice ball, a mat, and the kind of nod that means, don't ask too many questions. You're used to that. You bed down under a carved ceiling where dragons coil between clouds, and you listen to the rain start ticking on the tile like a clock's slow panic attack. And here, oddly, you sleep, really sleep. Not that half-conscious courier doze, not the swaying horse micro-nap, the full dreaming kind. And the dream is this. You're galloping across a world made of parchment. Hills curl like scrolls. Rivers ink themselves beneath your horse's hooves. Every gust of wind whispers a name in your ear, and none of them are yours. When you wake up, a monk is already sitting beside you. He's holding your saddlebag, but not in a suspicious way. More like he's weighing it. You carry more than letters, he says quietly. You want to reply with something clever, maybe sarcastic, but your voice is caught in your throat. Because somehow you know he's right. By now, the yam isn't just a delivery system. It's a shell carrier of memory. And you're not just moving information, you're preserving the empire's dream of itself. You get up, thank him, saddle up in the post-rain calm. The path from here is less direct, winding. You've reached the part of the route that historians still argue about whether these roads were official extensions of the yam or just sympathetic veins, pulsing beside the main artery. Some claim this region was too mountainous to ever be part of the true system. Others say the couriers came anyway, unofficial, unrecorded, because people needed the dream to reach them too. You ride through fog and rock switchback after switchback, where birds glide so close you feel their wing beats on your scalp. The sky hangs low here like it wants to listen in. This is where the yam gets mystical. Villages along the cliffs light incense for couriers. Not the messages, the couriers themselves. You stop in one place where they leave small bowls of oil on the trail, claiming it soothes your joints as you pass. A woman sings a lullaby in a dialect you've never heard before, but it calms your horse instantly. You're not even surprised anymore. Quirky tidbit, some mountain yam outposts used carrier pigeons with backup versions of your scrolls, just in case you plummeted off a cliff. But the pigeons were notoriously dramatic and often faked injuries to avoid work. There's a story about one pigeon who rode the trail in a courier's hood for 3 months before being noticed. Meanwhile, you push on. At this point, you've started recognizing faces, not individuals, but chow types. The thin-eyed station master with ink-stained fingers. The boy who stares at your saddlebag like it holds treasure. The innkeeper who gives you a bowl of soup and never asks what you're carrying, because nobody asks anymore. They just know it matters. But it's not always reverence. One evening, in a windswept gorge, a man tries to stop you. Says he needs the scroll you're carrying. Says it's about his brother or his taxes or his daughter. His story keeps changing. You don't dismount. You don't draw your weapon either. You just look at him until the desperation peels away, and all that's left is one. Not greed, not even malice, just the aching need to tautotiku. No. He backs off, because even when the world forgets itself, the yam remembers. And right now, you're the memory's last witness. You pass a tree with dozens of tiny scrolls tied to its branches. Locals believe if you whisper a message and tie it there, a courier will carry it beyond the mountains. You pause. Consider adding one yourself. But what would you say? That you're tired, that you're more story than skin now, that sometimes when you close your eyes, you see ink flowing through your veins. Instead, you ride on, and the path finally levels out. You're high now, really high. Snow glints in distant valleys. The air is thin, clean, and almost too sharp to breathe. Up here, even the birds sleep early. There's a final outpost, a hut barely larger than your horse. Inside, a girl, no older than 12 hands, you warm yak's milk and says, "You're the last one this week." You ask, "Last what?" "Last dream runner," she replies. You don't correct her, because at this altitude where the stars feel within reach and the empire a faraway murmur, that's exactly what you are. Not a courier, not a soldier, not even a messenger. You're a dream runner. A sleep sower, a silent promise delivered in the dark. And as night falls and the wind hushes and the scroll in your satchel warms against your ribs like a second heartbeat, you realize you've become the thing people wait for before closing their eyes, not because of the words you carry, but because you always arrive. Word count 1 so 91. Awaiting continue. You're not alone anymore. Oh, you're still riding solo, no entourage, no backup. But now the yam echoes behind you like a whispered chant. Villagers know your pace by heart. Dogs don't bark when you pass. Babies stop crying. Chickens politely step aside. You're part of the landscape now. Or maybe part of the myth. Out here near the far southeastern edge of the Mongol world. The road doesn't end, it dissolves. Turns from hard-packed dirt into soft suggestion. Stone posts give way to weathered memories of where they used to be. You check your path not by signs, but by feel. If your horse hesitates, you trust it. If the wind picks up, you shift your route slightly left, because last time you didn't, you lost a sandal to a ravine that wasn't supposed to be there. This is the frontier of belief. People still expect you to arrive, but they've stopped asking how, or when, or why. At one mountaintop settlement, a woman greets you with 2 bowls of soup and says, "Your shadow passed here yesterday." You nod like that's normal, because it is. That's the thing about being a dream runner this deep into the empire. Reality thins. Time swirls like smoke. You'll meet the same people twice, deliver a scroll that you swear you gave them 3 months ago. One child insists you visited him in a dream and warned him not to eat bad dumplings. He listened. His cousin did not, and that's when it hits you. You're not carrying the yam anymore. The yam is carrying you. This whole courier system, once a roaring machine of command and conquest, has become a living ghost, running its course long after the empire's voice has started to fade. Historians still argue whether this was planned longevity or accidental momentum. Did the Khans design something so efficient it outlived them, or did the riders themselves refuse to let it die? You're voting for the latter, because you've seen the looks in their eyes, the other couriers, the few you pass like stars on opposite orbits. You nod in shared weariness, shared purpose, shared stubborn refusal to stop riding just because the world got quiet. And what happens when the scrolls no longer come from above? That's happening now. You reach a station where the last official decree was received 4 years ago. Since then, it's been local stuff. A marriage proposal, a dispute over sheep, a story someone wanted passed on to a cousin 5 stations west. You're still delivering, because the yam has turned into a kind of collective heartbeat. No longer imperial command, it's communal memory. A courier arrives and a village knows it's still part of something, that the thread connecting them to others hasn't fully unraveled. Quirky tidbit. One station master here keeps a book of dreams people have told her to send. She writes them down, rolls them into scrolls, and hands them to passing couriers like they're real messages. Half her village thinks their dreams are being delivered. The other half plays along. It's not deception, it's comfort. And maybe in this phase, that's the yam's job. You sleep that night beneath a sky so clear it looks back at you. The stars arrange themselves into symbols. One looks like a wax seal, another like your old saddlebag. You know you're just imagining it, but the feeling is so strong it rattles your bones. You dream that you're the scroll now being carried by a faster rider tucked under a god's arm racing across constellations. When you wake, you're still tired, but not in a bad way. More like poetic fatigue, like the kind that comes after you've helped someone cry or made it through a very long hug. There's no one at the next outpost, just a fire still burning and a bowl of pine nuts left out for you. You eat them without a second thought. This place knows you, and you've started to wonder what happens when you stop riding. Will the yam stop too? Probably not. Someone else will take the reins. Some 11-year-old with good knees and no concept of joint pain. Someone hungry for wind in their face and the scent of scroll leather on their shirt. But maybe not. Maybe it ends with you. One final run, one final delivery. One final quiet arrival at a station where the porch light's still on, even though they don't know what they're waiting for. And what do you do then? You hand over the scroll. The girl takes it without a word, opens it, nods, smiles like she was expecting exactly what it says. You don't ask. You just sit, share some tea, and watch the road behind you start to fade in the dusk. Because tonight, no one's chasing you. There are no urgent dispatches. No con seal burning through your bag, just a long sigh from the wind. And a world that still sleeps a little easier, knowing that somewhere, somehow, you're still out there riding. Somewhere out here, the stars begin to repeat themselves. You notice it around the same time your horse starts choosing the paths before you consciously steer. The same twist in the trail. The same flickering lantern at a roadside hut. A sleeping dog that lifts its head not to bark, but as if to say, you again. You've crossed into what the old station masters call the echo zone. No one really agrees on its borders. Some say it starts near the Silk Road forks. Others claim it begins the first time you forget what month it is. All you know is this. The yam stops pretending to be a route and fully becomes a loop. You're delivering messages that feel suspiciously familiar. One scroll says, "Tell him the birds returned." Another says, "The roof didn't leak this year." You could swear you passed these along last winter, or the winter before that. But here they are again, fresh seals, fresh ink. So you shrug, ride on, deliver, because now it's not about the message, it's about the ritual. That's what this stretch of the yam is really for. Reassurance, rhythm, reminding scattered people that the world is still connected and someone is still carrying that connection on horseback. Even if the empire forgets them, even if they've started forgetting the empire. You pass a former relay station turned shrine. They've preserved your saddle, hung it like a relic above the door. You don't stop to tell them it's not yours. Why ruin the magic? Historians still argue whether the yam officially operated in this region by the mid-1300s. The records are fuzzy, the dates overlap, and some documents contradict themselves entirely. Some claim the system decayed into isolated outposts. Others argue it evolved quietly, unofficially, into something gentler, more local. Less imperial machine, more concultural immune system. You're starting to believe it, because now you're carrying stories, not orders. A child's first poem. A sketch of a comet. A hand-woven bracelet tucked into a scroll case with no explanation. It's not that the empire is gone, but here at the farthest edges, its grip is soft. More idea than law. And you've become part of the bedtime ritual. Villagers tell their children, sleep now. The rider is near. Some claim you pass through town only when everyone's asleep. That you leave dreams behind like footprints. That if you whisper a wish into the cracks between floorboards, you'll deliver it before dawn. You don't deny it, Because one night, at a high-altitude village so small, the sky feels like it's ceiling, an old woman hands you a scroll. It's wrapped in silk and smells faintly of lavender and campfire. Don't read it, she says, unless you forget who you are. You tuck it into your coat. You never look inside. Quirky tidbit. One lost yam courier is said to have turned himself into a post station. He built a yurt, marked it with banners, and began recording messages from travelers. He never left, just stayed there receiving and sending scrolls until no one could remember when he first arrived. Some locals believe he's still there, that he is the mountain now. You sleep in abandoned stations that smell like pine and fox musk. You dream of stairs that lead into scrolls, horses with human eyes, cities made of folded paper. You stop asking what's real, and it's not all peaceful. One evening, a bandit stops you, not with threats, but curiosity. Why still ride, he asks, poking the scroll case like it might hatch. No one's making you. You answer honestly, someone's waiting. He nods like he understands, then lets you pass. Because even the lawless respect the courier who doesn't stop. You reach the sea. That surprises you. You forgot the yam stretched this far. The final post station is perched on a cliff like a tooth. Its walls rattle in the wind. A boy waits outside, wrapped in blankets, holding 2 mugs of broth. You're late, he says. By how much, you ask? He shrugs. A dream and a half. Good enough. He takes the scroll, doesn't open it. Just places it gently into a box filled with others sealed unread. He says they're saved until someone needs to remember. That's what the yam has become, a memory vault. Not just for messages, but for feelings, seasons, smells, lullabies. Everything the Empire forgot to archive, the couriers did. You ride one last loop through the nearby village. No scrolls this time. No errands. Just a slow farewell. A woman waves from her window, rocking a baby. You pass 2 men fixing a roof, singing a tune that traveled here 5 scrolls ago. And finally, you stop beneath an arch made of scroll canes, dried and hollow. Someone's carved your horse's name into the beam. You didn't know your horse had a name. You dismount, sit, watch the sun melt into the sea. And for the first time in a long while, you think about sleep. Not a stolen nap, not a quick recharge, a real, final, earned sleep. Maybe the yam doesn't need you anymore, or maybe it always will. But for now, you close your eyes, and the wind whispers, you arrived. You wake up not to hoofbeats, nor dawn bells, nor the bark of station dogs. Just the sound of waves, steady and slow, dragging the shore like a lazy brushstroke. The yam is still. No scroll in your hands. No seal digging into your ribs. No ticking clock of empire behind your eyes. You sit for a while, the kind of sit that has no agenda. Just your bones warming in the sun and your thoughts tumbling like slow dice. But something's shifted. There's a boy waiting beside the fire pit. Not the same one from the night before. This one's younger mouth sticky from stolen dates, holding out a scroll like it's a feathered snake. He doesn't say a word, just offers. And you understand. It's time to pass it on. You take the scroll not because you must, but because you can. You've become a vessel, a trusted limb of a system that no longer demands allegiance but inspires participation. The yam is no longer a command. It's an invitation. Your new horse, barely broken in tail, swishing like it's still undecided about your worth, nuzzles the stirrup as you mount. The first stretch is slow. Every hoofstep a rehearsal, a reboot. And as you leave that seaside post behind, you realize this is your second life on the road. But something's different now. You're no longer riding for the empire, for glory, or for gold. You're riding for the oak echo. The whisper that ties a fisherman in the east to a herdsman in the west. The old woman who wants her lullaby sung in a village she's never seen. One scroll you carry today is wrapped in embroidered felt. It smells like goat milk and snow. Inside, a hand-drawn map of stars with no names. Just little notes like this one blinks first, and good for weddings. Another is a riddle. What travels without legs, sleeps without breath, and dreams without eyes. Spoiler, it's you. Probably. Historians still argue whether the late-stage Yam couriers were sanctioned or self-appointed. Were they recognized outposts of continuity or just romantic drifters with inherited saddlebags? Either way, the legend stuck. In time, merchant guilds adopted your routes. Pilgrims borrowed your shortcuts. Even thieves used your relay markers to triangulate the best loot spots. But through it all, the image of the lone rider who never stops remained. In Turkish folktales, he becomes a wind spirit. In Persian night stories, she's a veiled wanderer who delivers letters from the dead. In Siberia, children leave out breadcrumbs at their windows in case the scroll man gets hungry. One fringe theory claims the Yam couriers invented time zones. Another suggests they're responsible for the earliest form of express marriage proposals. A disputed stone carving in Azerbaijan shows a courier handing a scroll to a falcon. Historians can't agree if it's symbolic or just wishful fan art. You pass a courier going the opposite direction. He's older, wiser, beard like river moss. He gives you a slow nod and 2 words, trust horses. You nod back. Not because you understand, but because you will. In a canyon marked with soot and memory, you stop at a rest station made entirely of mirrors. Not glass, polished steel shards of mica, bits of old armor. It reflects your journey back at you, the dust, the lines on your face, the scroll cases, the half-forgotten songs you hum to your horse. You write nothing down. This moment isn't for recording. It's for folding into yourself. Like a scroll sealed not with wax, but memory. Later that night, under a sky the color of wet slate, you arrive at a settlement made entirely of yurts shaped like snail shells. They spin in the wind. The people inside live by lunar rhythm. One woman tells you, sleep now. The path ahead is made of dreams. You do, and in your dream, the Yam is a tree roots spread across steps, branches curling into cloud and flame. Every scroll you ever carried is a leaf. Every hoofbeat a pulse. Every delay a pause in the universe's breath. You wake smiling, because now you know. This system was never just logistics. It was story delivery. Emotion delivery. A bedtime promise whispered across continents. You're not alone. You're still part of this. You reach a mountain pass lined with bells. They ring as you move. No one hears them but you and the marmots. Each bell marks a moment someone waited for something that did arrive. That's your legacy now. Not conquest, not urgency. Reliability. And in the final leg of this run, as you descend toward the basin where 3 rivers kiss you, feel something lift from your shoulders. Not a burden, a baton. You've handed it off already, even if you didn't see it. A young girl in a border town now mimics your pace. A boy near the old capital dreams in relay routes. A quiet teen in a hill camp sketches scrolls into the wind with a stick. The Yam has changed again. Not ended, not faded, just transformed. From imperial courier network to cultural bloodstream. From command chain to dream thread. And you're not done yet! But the road is softer now. The riders ahead of you are fewer. The sleep between stations is deeper. Because the world somehow still expects you. And you ridiculous, stubborn, scroll-clad creature that you are, still show up. This is the part where the road stops moving beneath you, where the land stops rearranging itself with every gallop, where you realize you've mapped something bigger than the steps. You've mapped inner trust. You coast into the last outpost, not because you're tired, but because the yam is whispering. This is the final scroll. The station doesn't look like much. Sloped roof, driftwood beams, soot marks on the lintel. But inside it holds a quiet that feels deeper than sleep. No horses here, no bustle, just the slow pulse of a room that has waited for years. You hand over your last message. The keeper, a woman with white braids and a cloak stitched from old courier flags, takes it without a word. She sets it on a low altar surrounded by dried flowers and melted ink pots. You're not sure if it'll be read. Doesn't matter. You delivered. One scroll in a million dreams out. That's the rule. You sit by the hearth. A breeze stirs the coals. The keeper places a bowl of warm milk and toasted millet in front of you. Not because you need fuel, because she remembers. You were part of something bigger, and now it remembers you back. Quirky tidbit. Some yam couriers were buried upright still in the saddle facing the direction of their final delivery. One grave unearthed in the 20th century revealed a man with scroll fragments stuffed into his boots. No one knows if it was ritual or just bad packing. Your boots are empty now. So is your scroll case. And still you feel full. You step outside and for the first time in a long while, you don't feel the pull of the next relay. Historians still argue whether the yam ever truly ended. Some say it was dismantled under later khans. Others claim it simply went underground, woven into merchant routes, smuggler trails, song lines, and bedtime stories. Some fringe scholars even suggest the courier spirit persists in unexpected places, postal workers who whistle between doorsteps, librarians with perfect memory, a pizza guy who always shows up during the third act. You look to the sky. A single bird circles overhead, low and lazy, like it's watching over a child. Or maybe a tired courier? You realize this wasn't just a system of speed. It was a ritual of arrival. And you've arrived. So you unbuckle your satchel. Let it fall. Take a deep breath. Feel the air stretch through your ribs like fresh parchment. No more galloping dreams. No more memorized stars. Just presence. And a promise that the scrolls you carried, stories, secrets, songs, changed how people slept. Because when the yam rode strong, people could close their eyes, knowing someone was always awake, always riding, always coming to connect the edges of the world. It's why so many slept better. You walk away from the station with nothing in your hands and everything in your chest. The road behind you begins to fade, not like it's forgotten, more like it's finished. And then, like the soft close of a scroll case lid, the story begins to fold in. The hoofbeats quiet, the lanterns dim, the last ember of urgency cools to a gentle glow, and you strange traveler of tangled roots and sleepless nights, you finally lie down. Breathe in, breathe out. The yam rides on in dreams now, and you rest. Let's word count 1, 2, 3, wind down 300 words. So here you are. The scrolls are gone. The saddlebags are empty. The horse is grazing quietly, as if it too knows the journey is complete. Let your muscles soften now. Let the last traces of wind unwind from your hair. You don't need to ride tonight. You don't need to remember every turn of the trail or the names of the stars. You've earned stillness. Because what you did, what every yam courier did, was more than deliver messages. You built a lullaby that stretched across the world. And as you breathe slowly, now notice how it still echoes. In the rustle of your bedsheets, in the whisper of the fan or the soft hum of the room around you. That's the sound of the system still alive in little ways. There's no need to chase the next relay. No need to look back. All of it, every scroll, every hoofbeat, every starlit camp lives in you now. So let your eyelids drift low heavier with each breath. Let the courier in you fold away into calm. You're not on the clock anymore. You're home. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between stories, a new scroll begins to write itself. But that's for another night. For now. Just rest. Through section 15. This is the part where the road stops moving beneath you, where the land stops rearranging itself with every gallop, where you realize you've mapped something bigger than the steps. You've mapped trust. You coast into the last outpost, not because you're tired, but because the yam is whispering. This is the final scroll. The station doesn't look like much. Sloped roof, driftwood beams, soot marks on the lintel. But inside it holds a quiet that feels deeper than sleep. No horses here, no bustle, just the slow pulse of a room that has waited for years. You hand over your last message. The keeper, a woman with white braids and a cloak stitched from old courier flags, takes it without a word. She sets it on a low altar surrounded by dried flowers and melted ink pots. You're not sure if it'll be read. Doesn't matter. You delivered. One scroll and a million dreams out. That's the rule. You sit by the hearth. A breeze stirs the coals. The keeper places a bowl of warm milk and toasted millet in front of you. Not because you need fuel, because she remembers. You were part of something bigger, and now it remembers you back. Quirky tidbit. Some yam couriers were buried upright still in the saddle, facing the direction of their final delivery. One grave unearthed in the 20th century revealed a man with scroll fragments stuffed into his boots. No one knows if it was ritual or just bad packing. Your boots are empty now. So is your scroll case. And still you feel full. You step outside, and for the first time in a long while, you don't feel the pull of the next relay. Historians still argue whether the yam ever truly ended. Some say it was dismantled under later khans. Others claim it simply went underground, woven into merchant routes, smuggler trails, songlines, and bedtime stories. Some fringe scholars even suggest the courier spirit persists in unexpected places, postal workers who whistle between doorsteps, librarians with perfect memory, a pizza guy who always shows up during the third act. You look to the sky. A single bird circles overhead, low and lazy like it's watching over a child. Or maybe a tired courier. You realize this wasn't just a system of speed. It was a chatitum, ritual of arrival. And you've arrived. So you unbuckle your satchel. Let it fall. Take a deep breath. Feel the air stretch through your ribs like fresh parchment. No more galloping dreams. No more memorized stars. Just presence. And a promise that the scrolls you carried, stories, secrets, songs, changed how people slept. Because when the yam rode strong, people could close their eyes knowing someone was always awake, always riding, always coming to connect the edges of the world. It's why so many slept better. You walk away from the station with nothing in your hands and everything in your chest. The road behind you begins to fade. Not like it's forgotten, more like it's finished. And then, like the soft close of a scroll case lid, the story begins to fold in. The hoofbeats quiet. The lanterns dim. The last ember of urgency cools to a gentle glow. And you, strange traveler of tangled routes and sleepless nights, you finally lie down. Breathe in, breathe out. The yam rides on in dreams now, and you rest. Wind down 300 words. So here you are. The scrolls are gone. The saddlebags are empty. The horse is grazing quietly, as if it too knows the journey is complete. Let your muscles soften now. Let the last traces of wind unwind from your hair. You don't need to ride tonight. You don't need to remember every turn of the trail or the names of the stars. You've earned stillness, because what you did, what every yam courier did, was more than deliver messages. You built a lullaby that stretched across the world, and as you breathe slowly, now notice how it still echoes. In the rustle of your bedsheets, in the whisper of the fan or the soft hum of the room around you. That's the sound of the system still alive in little ways. There's no need to chase the next relay. No need to look back. All of it, every scroll, every hoofbeat, every starlit camp lives in you now. So let your eyelids drift low heavier with each breath. Let the courier in you fold away into calm. You're not on the clock anymore. You're home. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between stories, a new scroll begins to write itself. But that's for another night. For now, just rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.